Good.
Well, good morning and welcome to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom. We are broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street in Corning. I'm so glad that you've joined us this morning. We have a lot of breaking news from last night we're going to get to right here at the top of the hour. In the 7 o'clock hour, we'll be talking with Assemblyman Phil Palmisano. Yesterday we had Joe Sempolinski. Today, Assemblyman Phil Palmisano. So we look forward to that. If you have any questions for the Assemblyman, please feel free to get those to me at any point during the program at that number on the bottom of your screen. First, a comment from a viewer. Good morning, Frank. Well, good morning, Mark. I see Elon Musk is waving a chainsaw around to cut government spending, and Mark is not being facetious. Would that be the right word? No, he is not making that up. He was actually, was it at CPAC yesterday? He was wielding a chainsaw. And he did mention the $5,000 per taxpayer. It would be nice. Let's see if it happens. Well, that raises a good point, and we're going to get to the breaking news here in just a moment. But there was a question posed by the New York Times I'm going to pose right here at the beginning of the program just to get some of your comments. And let me just give you a little background. It was at CPAC. Elon Musk wields a chainsaw for bureaucracy on the stage at CPAC to symbolize the Doge's massive government cuts. The world's richest man had a chromed out chainsaw. It was actually given to him by the president of Argentina, with the Doge chief, when it was handed to him, triumphantly holding the chainsaw above his head in a macho gesture to the conservative crowd. "This is the chainsaw for bureaucracy," he said. And it was emblazoned with a Argentinian phrase that well, we can't say exactly what it means, but long live freedom. Gosh darn it. I think you can get the idea. But the question posed, where is it? Did I already lose it? The question posed by the New York Post this morning, or not, I guess it's not really a question. It's suggesting instead of giving us a dividend check of up to what has been thrown around as $5,000, President Trump, I thought, had a more reasonable idea, which is we take 20% of what is saved and give that back to the taxpayers. Not necessarily a certain figure, just 20%. But the Post editorial board, and we'll get to it further in the program, paying down the debt will help Americans vastly more than the Doge dividend checks. So they're suggesting that just pay down the national debt with this money saved. Now the CNN suggested that, and I think you'll like this, that it could reignite inflation, as if inflation was going away, but it could reignite inflation, these checks. So your thoughts on that. But first, late last night, Senate Republicans scored a win over their House counterparts, officially passing their preferred budget resolution to tackle some of President Trump's priorities, such as securing the southern border. After hours of back-to-back voting on Democratic amendments, the bill to fund border security, energy, and defense finally got its vote on the chamber floor. This particular budget resolution, and this is Senate Majority Leader John Thune, addresses the president's top priority, which is securing the border and implementing and putting into place his immigration policies, rebuilding our military, and creating energy dominance for this country. Now, this actually passed the Senate, and you would actually say it was early morning today. The leader and Republicans in the upper chamber started to move forward with the all-important budget reconciliation process earlier this month, according to Fox News, pushing their preferred plan through a key committee and clearing a procedural heater. Anyway. The move came despite House Republicans being expected to take the lead in passing a budget bill first. Thune and Senate Budget Committee Chairman Lindsey Graham also pressed on even after Trump came out and support the House's proposal over the Senate proposal. The decision to move forward with the Senate's alternative budget plan, which is two-pronged, as opposed to the House effort to pass one large bill, was blessed by Vice President J.D. Vance on Wednesday. Procedural hurdle. There it is, folks. I just had to take a second to breathe. Hey, it's Friday morning. I was out late last night collecting petitions. Trump himself did not seem bothered by their effort, either, posting to Truth Social, "Thank you to Majority Leader John Thune and the Republican Senate for working so hard on funding the Trump border agenda. We are setting records, the likes of which have never been seen before, on stopping criminal illegal aliens from entering the country. Put simply, we are delivering for the American people far faster and more successfully than anyone thought possible. Your work on funding this effort is greatly appreciated." So he did not seem bothered by this. The vote-a-rama, as it is known, was a marathon of votes. It was a 50-hour debate clock that ended Thursday night. After that procedural vote, that's when the 50-hour debate began. Now, Chuck Schumer, who just cannot find his messaging. He must be very frustrated. He's trying. He's attempting. Fellow Democrats are getting mad at him, feeling that he is out of touch with today's maybe newer politics. Saying, "Tonight, one amendment at a time, Democrats expose Republicans' true colors here on the Senate floor. For the first time this year, Senate Republicans were forced to go on record and defend their plans to cut taxes for Donald Trump's billionaire friends. What happened tonight was only the beginning. This debate is going on for weeks and maybe months. Democrats will be ready to come back and do this over and over again because Americans deserve to know the truth." Again and again and again, Republicans sent a clear and consistent message from the Senate floor. Under their agenda, billionaires win and American families lose. If Republicans continue with this reckless plan to help their billionaire buddies at the expense of the American families, Democrats will make sure that the American people know the truth at every opportunity. Does that fall on deaf ears? It's like his chant at that anti-Musk rally where he said, "We will win," after they had just had a historic loss a few months before in November. This cliche line of attack. How many times did he use the term billionaire in that statement? 4, 5? I don't know. It doesn't seem, looking at the favorability ratings and the like, it doesn't seem to be landing. And that's why I think many Democrats are getting upset at Chuck Schumer for not crafting a more effective message, talking points. But by lowering the threshold for Senate passage from 60 votes to 51 out of 100, reconciliation allows the party in power to skirt its opposition to advance its agenda. All right, enough on that. That was the breaking news. CNN puts it a little differently, that the Senate GOP adopts the budget blueprint to advance Trump's agenda, setting up a clash with House Republicans. The final vote came after a rare overnight work session for the Senate that started Thursday evening, as I mentioned, and stretched into the early hours of this morning, wrapping up around an hour ago. How about that for breaking news? I thought it was a little bit before that. Talk about breaking news. You're getting it within an hour. So it wrapped up the votes at 5 a.m. The final tally was 52 to 48, with GOP Senator Rand Paul joining Democrats to oppose the resolution. Now, it's interesting about Rand Paul. But we'll talk about him in a second. Some of the decisions and some of the moves he's making. We'll talk about him in just 1 second, because yesterday, Kash Patel, you may have heard by now, though it may have got buried in the news cycle. You may have missed it, but Kash Patel was confirmed as the new FBI director. Man, the cabinet positions and that Trump has been able to get through. We talked about it yesterday with Joseph Polinsky. It's a breakneck speed. The Senate voted 51 to 49. That's one of the closer ones, the closest being Pete Hegseth, where J.D. Vance had to come in to break the tie. But 51 to 49 approved Patel to serve a 10-year term, with Senators Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski breaking ranks and voting with 47 Democrats against the nominee. Now, some of the things that Patel will be looking at is shaking up the Bureau and attempting to depoliticize decision-making after a series of controversies involving either alleged or proven biases against Republicans. Trump told Sean Hannity earlier this week, I think Kash is going to do great. I think they have to do great or we have a problem. But when you look at what they did, the raid at Mar-a-Lago, you look at what they did, their reputation is shot. So again, Kash Patel confirmed as the FBI director just yesterday. Now, that's why I said I was going to mention Rand Paul just quickly. He has offered his, quote, admittedly a little tardy endorsement of President Donald Trump and his cabinet yesterday, and praised the president's nominees, many of whom he said he would have chosen himself. Quote, a few people may have noticed that I resisted an enthusiastic endorsement of Donald Trump during the election. But now I'm amazed by the Trump cabinet, many of whom I would have picked. I love his message to the Ukrainian warmongers, and along with his Doge initiative, shows I was wrong to withhold my endorsement. So today, admittedly a little tardy, I give Donald Trump my enthusiastic endorsement. Too little too late, some will say, but, it is sincere, so there is that. He explained, noting, in typical Paul fashion, that individuals should not expect the endorsement to be fawning. I still think tariffs are a terrible idea, but Dios mio, what courage, what tenacity. Go, Donald Trump, go. Listen, I'm not going to knock Rand Paul. There's no reason to knock Rand Paul, although it is interesting. I don't see exactly why he chose not to vote for that Senate budget bill yesterday. But it is, or this morning, 5 a.m., mere moments ago, when the Senate passed the budget proposal, budget blueprint, if you will. But it is interesting that he sometimes likes to play the contrarian. But to come out now and endorse is fine. I mean, like he said, it's sincere. Some, he said, will think it's too little too late. I just think not too many people were clamoring to hear his thoughts. That's kind of my thought on it. But again, if you're just waking up, the Senate border budget passed around 5 a.m. this morning. We have some very disturbing news coming out of Israel and Gaza. We'll talk about that when we come back. Then I have an update on the appeal in Sheriff Allard's case. We have a little more information on that, which will tie into New York State issues. We are going to talk about Doge. We are going to talk about some of these cuts. I loved yesterday. It was kind of a countdown. It's so fascinating to me that the talking point from people that don't like Doge is they're at the IRS. As if the IRS is some sacred place that shouldn't be touched. When we know that Biden hired so many more IRS agents, I just don't see that being something to hang your hat on. To say, oh, wow, they're going after their IRS. You better be scared. Well, are too many people losing sleep over the Doge assessment of the IRS? But yesterday were a lot of firings at the IRS. And, of course, the headlines read, right at tax season. Okay. Well, we know that there was a major increase in hiring during the Biden administration. So we'll talk about that as well. We've got a lot to get to. Don't let me run too late. Stay with us. We'll be right back. We're Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, stay with us.
Have you been unable to work for over a year due to a mental or physical disability?
Were you recently denied Social Security disability benefits? Great news. You may be eligible for money, back pay, relief.
If you've been pre-qualified and diagnosed with a recognized condition that prohibits you from working, our lawyers can file a claim to get your disability benefit.
Call us today and find out more.
Call now, 844-617-0440.
Welcome to Pangea Global Tea House.
Pangea Global Tea House offers comfort foods of the world with over 50 teas and a sampling of cuisine from over 10 countries. Come in and try our duck baki or eggs benedict. They are full of flavors your taste buds will thank you for.
I'm Grace. I'm Ida, and I lived in California.
To me, was just a puppy when I moved in. He's a emotional support animal.
I had Missy, who was 15 years old and blind.
Likes the people, he likes to greet all the people. All the employees are happy to see him.
I feel that my pets are very welcome here. I feel very welcome here. I think it's great.
In a few words. Urkel, glasses. Nerd. It pays to know your nerds. If you guys didn't get nerd with me sitting up here on this show, 25 words or less.
Weeknights at 5.
The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street in Corning. Comments from viewers. Frank, I saw where Chuck Schumer's net worth is in double-digit millions. Tax cuts for millionaires are okay, but he draws the line on billionaires. Thank you very much. Well, it's just such a cliche talking point. But, you know, meaning what Chuck Schumer put out, but I guess that's politics. Next up, for 4 long, hard years, we tried it the left way. Now we need to try it the right way. Thank you very much. And a comment, last comment in this segment. Good morning, Frank. Well, good morning. Climate Fact Friday from Bob. Hi, Bob. The high temperature in Barrow, Alaska today will be minus 10 degrees Fahrenheit. And the high in Miami, Florida will be 72 degrees Fahrenheit. People live and work in both places. The difference in temperature is 82 degrees. And they say a 1.5 degree temperature increase will destroy mankind. Thank you, Bob. Thank you for our Climate Fact Friday. Appreciate that. I did see, and we'll get to it probably with the Assemblyman in the 7 o'clock hour, but more than 20 states have now filed lawsuits to block New York's Superfund Act. The Texas Attorney General calls the new law an unconstitutional shakedown of vital American energy industries that form the bedrock of our national economic independence. And if you're not familiar with the Climate Change Superfund Act that Governor Hochul signed into law, it essentially tells a business that has been following the rules for decades, doing everything New York State demands of them, all the red tape, all the bureaucracy. Now, retroactively, Hochul says we're fining you billions of dollars because climate change, global warming, whatever you want to call it, is the, I guess, the popular topic of the day. And now you are the bad guys, so give us your money retroactively. What that means to businesses thinking about coming in, I think there was a viewer that had a great point, where what if you're, for instance, they told us butter was bad and margarine was good, and then things have changed. Well, what if you're somebody producing butter and you say, why would I come to New York if that becomes the next fad of things to go after? And all of a sudden there's a super fund created to attack us. I mean, it's just another example of the business climate here in New York being dismal. All right, yesterday, on a more somber note, Israel had a bus explosion that rocked Tel Aviv. It is a suspected terror attack. 3 buses in Israel detonated late yesterday in what police are investigating as a suspected terror attack. 2 empty buses exploded simultaneously in different parking lots. The third one went up in flames, and additional bombs were also planted on 2 other buses but failed to explode. So they are treating this as a terror attack. Now, authorities halted all buses, trains, and light trains in the country to search for additional bombs, according to Israeli media reports. Bus drivers throughout the country have also been advised to search their vehicles before traveling. That ties in with, and man, I hate an update like this. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says that the bodies that Hamas released yesterday, that we talked about on the program, where they paraded them through the streets, it was sickening. It was not that of the hostage, that the mother of the 2 toddlers that were brutally murdered by Hamas. Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says a body that Hamas militants released during the handover of remains of Israeli hostages is that of a Gazan woman instead of that of Shiri Bibis, the mother of 2 young boys whose bodies were returned on Thursday. In a statement released Friday, Netanyahu criticized the handover. This is coming out just a couple hours ago. That the handover of the wrong remains as a, quote, cruel and malicious violation of the ceasefire agreement, and said Hamas would, quote, pay the full price for the action. Hamas militants turned over 4 bodies yesterday under the tenuous ceasefire. Israel confirmed 1 body was that of Oded Lifshitz, who was 83 when he was abducted during the Hamas attack on Israel that started the war on October 7, 2023. The remains of Shiri Bibis, 2 young sons, Ariel and Kafir Bibis, were positively identified, but added the 4th body was not that of their mother nor of any other hostage. Quote, we will work with determination to bring Shiri home together with all our hostage, both living and the dead, and to ensure that Hamas pays the full price for the cruel and malicious violation of the agreement. The sacred memory of Oded and Ariel and Kafir will be forever enshrined in the heart of the nation. May God avenge their blood. And so we will avenge. Because we had reported yesterday that the remains were released in a sickening way, parading through the streets. I even read that the coffins had to go through metal detectors because Israel's confirmed that they could be booby-trapped. Well, a U.S. official has warned that Hamas would face total annihilation if all hostages, living and dead, were not returned to Israel. Adam Boulder, President Donald Trump's special envoy for hostages, issued the stark threat hours after the bodies were identified, and that it turned out to be one was an anonymous, unidentified body that was not the mother of the 2 slain children. Bowler told Anderson Cooper, it's horrific, it's a clear violation, and if I have one piece of advice for Hamas, now It's you need to release her body immediately. Bowler called for the immediate release of all hostages, including the bodies of 4 Americans killed during their captivity in the Gaza Strip, and Eden Alexander, a New Jersey native believed to be alive. If I were Hamas, I would release anybody. All right, let me try that again. This is Bowler. If I were Hamas, I would release everybody, or they are going to face total annihilation right now. He recommended Israel make demands to Hamas through every country that's coordinating to get the remaining hostages and bodies back to the Jewish state. As the New York Post editorial board said, this handover, the way they did the handover of hostages, shows how hate rules all Gaza. They called it a propaganda victory. But the civilized world can only take the macabre affair as more evidence that hate rules Gazan society. Rather than allow a simple, dignified transfer of remains of innocents, the terrorists staged a twisted parade of the coffins through a cemetery before a crowd of cheering civilians. How should we define Hamas when you see this? Is it only the goons with green headbands, or everyone there enthusiastically joining in this vile travesty? That's a very great question. No wonder a majority of Israelis back President Trump's suggestion that Gaza's population be evacuated en masse after the war with no right of return. No one has the obvious means and will to impose that particular answer, but the world can count on Hamas to keep making the extent of the problem as painfully obvious as possible. Expected to make Saturday's planned release of 6 more live hostages and next week's handover of more remains every bit as appalling. And as I've got to move on here, but as Andrea Pizer has said, Hamas shows the world why Gaza is beyond saving. It's, man, it's tragic. And this piece by Andrea Pizer is heart-wrenching, talking about when you think about those toddlers and all they'll miss out on in life, and to see Hamas parade their bodies in the street. They have committed unspeakable crimes and must be hunted down by any means necessary. Our patience is gone. If it takes sending the people of Gaza elsewhere to live in the countries that supported these terrorists, so be it. There could be no more little children slaughtered to the sound of cheers. Never again. We need, I'm sorry to bring up that such a somber topic, but I wanted to bring you the breaking stories of what Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu had to say about the release of the 2 toddlers and not the mother, trying to, I guess, disguise and give a body of an unknown Gazan woman. When we come back, we have a couple of New York State issues, which I'm not going to dive too much in depth, but I want to touch on them before we have Assemblyman Phil Palmisano on the program in the 7 o'clock hour. I see a lot of waves, a lot of texts coming in. We'll get to those comments here in just a moment. I said we do have an update on the appeal of the judge's decision that found in favor of Allard. We'll talk about that when we come back. Stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox.
What if there was a place where every kid got a chance to be great? There is a place. Milton Hershey School. We're more than a school. We change lives. And you can be next.
Let's beat the dark days of winter and have a vacation from taxation with the Hesselson's Hot Tub. What better way to start or end every day than with hot water therapy and your very own Hesselson's Hot Tub. With every spa purchase, Hesselson's guarantees great customer satisfaction and the best service team in the area. Plus, with Hesselson's Vacation from Taxation sales event, free steps, free cover lifter, free music, and 0% interest-free financing. Ask about Hesselson's chemical auto ship program and save even more. Stop in today and see why after 70 years it's still fun to poke in the corners at Hesselson's.
It's all types to play Family Feud. The Blunt Mama.
If you knew Steve Harvey was at your door, you'd answer it wearing what?
Nothing.
Nothing.
Weeknights at 7 and 7:30 on Big Fox.
Invite you to discover what makes our school community so special, including the fact that everything, top-notch education, housing, healthcare, food, clothing, technology, and much more is provided to our students at no cost to our families. This is thanks to the generosity of our founders, chocolate maker Milton S. Hershey and his wife, Catherine.
Anyone, anywhere can record crimes as they happen, and we're going to watch them right here.
He just took his car.
With cameras everywhere, you can run, but you can't hide. Watch iCrime.
The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are back with Frankly Speaking, broadcasting live and proudly from the Hesselson studio here on Marcus Street in Corning. Let's go to some viewer comments, shall we? Good morning, Frank. Well, good morning. As a lifelong resident of New York, Chuck Schumer does not represent me in any way. Let's audit his millions. Yes, Chuck Schumer, there for a very, very long time, a career politician. I do find it interesting, especially after that rally where he just looks so awkward. The Democrats are starting to kind of point the finger at people like Schumer, saying maybe this is our problem, why we can't win. The messages he's crafting, not knowing how to handle the brave new Trump world. So I understand your feeling that he does not represent you in any way. I think many of us, if not all in this audience, would say the same. Next up, the Earth went from a molten state to eventually sprout life, then it was hit by a meteor. And great flooding talk about a climate change. And we are the result. It's all about power and control over the people. Always has been. That will never change as long as man exists. Yes, we know from the beginning, well, whether I think originally called global warming, then climate change, et cetera, et cetera. Many people got very rich off of this push. All right, comment from a different viewer. I'm so glad it appears that we have Elon Musk, one of the richest men in the world, and obviously a global elite person, helping us mitigate and bring to light the waste of government spending. And there is so much of it. And like I said, pushing the idea that, oh no, they're going after the IRS, as if the American people are now quaking in their boots, saying, oh no, not the IRS. It's sacred. Please leave the IRS alone. I think it's pretty laughable. And finally, last comment in this segment. Good morning, Frank. Good morning. This is so incredibly sad and heartbreaking. And help me understand how anyone with a soul can cheer this on. Yes, that's in reference to what we were just talking about with the return of the remains, where Hamas parading the coffins through the streets, having a celebration. And then it turns out, tragically, that the mother of the two toddlers, the babies, one never really knowing any type of life outside of captivity, that the mother's body was not returned. They tried to hide it with another unknown Gazan woman's body. It is. How anybody can cheer this on. And to your point, there were anti-Israel, anti-Semitic protests in a Jewish community in New York City. What was it, Tuesday? Wednesday? May have even happened more recently. That's not even to point out at college campuses. And the celebrations that so many had on the anniversary of October 7th. The anti-Semitic, and it's important to point out, anti-Semitic, anti-American, anti-police protests. How anybody can sleep at night after joining in one of those protests beats me. How they can even live with themselves. As you say here, how anyone with a soul can cheer this on. When you see the picture of those toddlers, it's heartbreaking. So I'm with you, viewer. I couldn't agree more. Let's go to some very local issues because I have some more information on the appeal, the Steuben County appeal of the judge's decision that found in favor of Allard. Yesterday, we had mentioned that the legislature voted 9-8 not to appeal. You know, it's already cost the county a lot of money in this lawsuit. The judge found that Allard did no wrong. It was quite a it was quite an opinion piece, or I don't know how you would word that, not opinion, but quite a lengthy essay from the judge, because I'm lacking a better word, going after the county. So you'd think, okay, no sense spending any more money on this. We better move on. If nothing else, the optics of it, when so many legislators are up for re-election, maybe it's time to call it a day. So 9-8, they said, no, we do not want to appeal. But what we learned yesterday, and this again from our friends at LEA, and I confirmed it with others, not that we don't trust LEA, but our friends at LEA and Hornell, we learned the reason why. County Manager Kelly Fitzpatrick, friend of Frankly Speaking, says it's because the county's outside counsel says that because former county legislative chair Scott Van Etten was named in the lawsuit, and because Van Etten wants to pursue the appeal, the outside counsel says the county legislature has an obligation to defend Van Etten legally, since Van Etten is named in the sheriff's litigation. So the vote, really unnecessary because of Scott Van Etten, I don't know what the term would be, really holding a grudge in this case, wanting to appeal this decision. So the rest of the legislature and the county has no choice. So this is going to cost a significant amount of money to appeal that. Now, having said this, and we'll read the names of how the vote went originally, just because it sends a larger picture. We will be talking with not only Assemblyman Phil Palmisano about that today, but we're going to be talking with the man himself, Sheriff Jim Allard, on the program on Tuesday. So you will not want to miss that Tuesday as we find out his opinion on the appeal of the judge's decision, the Supreme Court judge's decision that found in favor of Allard. Now, this has become cliche, but I'll use the term anyway. The old saying that when you find yourself in a hole, stop digging. Seems like that is not the decision being made by, and I guess the county in general, but or at least 8 of the legislative members. So what we learned is the lawmakers who voted to appeal the ruling. So these are the ones that wanted it appealed. The 8 that wanted it appealed are Scott Van Etten, Brian Shue, Bob Nichols, James Kuhl, Wendy Lozo, Gary Swackhammer, Fred Potter, and Mike Hanna. The county lawmakers who voted against the appeal are Kelly Fitzpatrick, Paul Van Solis, I think I'm pronouncing that wrong and I apologize, Hilda Lando, Carol Ferratella, Jeff Horton, Shannon Logsdon, William Thew, Joe Tobia, and Nick Pelham. So thank you for that information coming from WLEA and the confirmation. If that's a little confusing, I will have more information for you when we talk to Sheriff Allard. But I wanted to give you an update on that since we left it a little generic yesterday. And we'll keep you updated on that because I know a lot of people have been following this very closely, especially viewers of this program, even viewers that are in Steuben County, and I appreciate that when they've been so upset that someone who was voted for by the people, the sheriff, going through this at his own expense. So I understand the frustration there. Wow, we have a lot of comments coming in. My goodness, I didn't even realize the time. Running late. We got a couple other New York State issues, so we're covering everything. International, federal, state, local. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox.
Frankly Speaking, Roof Cam is brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact Boss Security for all your business and home security needs.
You know, William, with the name Camille growing up, I had a lot of nicknames. Camille Schmiel, Cammy, Camera, Cam.
Oh, I remember. Cam on the Lamb.
Chameleon.
Charles.
That was a weird one. Did you have any nicknames? Bill.
Bill.
Yeah, I guess that's it.
I have diabetes, but I manage it well. It's a little pill with a big story to tell. I take once daily Jardians at each day start. As time went on, it was easy to see. I'm lowering my A1C, and And for adults with type 2 diabetes and known heart disease, Jardiance can lower the risk of cardiovascular death too.
Serious side effects include increased ketones in blood or urine, which can be fatal. Stop Jardiance and call your doctor right away if you have nausea, vomiting, stomach pain, tiredness, trouble breathing, or increased ketones. Jardiance may cause dehydration that can suddenly worsen kidney function and make you feel dizzy, lightheaded, or weak upon standing. Genital yeast infections in men and women, urinary tract infections, low blood sugar, or a rare life-threatening bacterial infection between and around the anus and genitals can occur. Call your doctor right away if you have fever or feel weak or tired, and pain, tenderness, swelling, or redness in the genital area. Don't use if allergic to Jardiance. Stop use if you have a serious allergic reaction. Call your doctor if you have rash, swelling, difficulty breathing, or swallowing. You may have increased risk for lower limb loss. Call your doctor right away if you have new pain or tenderness, sores, ulcers, or infection in your legs or feet.
Jardiance is really swell, the little pill with a big story to tell.
The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security. We thank Boss Security. And we encourage you to give them a call today for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back. We're broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio on Market Street in Corning. Coming up in just a little bit, we'll be talking with Assemblyman Phil Palmisano. Let's go to some viewer comments, shall we? Climate change is phony. You can see the weather runs in cycles to maintain the Earth's balance. Thank you very much. Mark writes in and says, I think it's ridiculous to appeal the judge's decision in favor of Sheriff Allard, and I think it should come out of their own pockets, not ours. Yes, it's been estimated around $200,000 already spent on this case by the residents of Steuben County. Now we have the appeal being made. So I understand your sentiment, Mark. We're not sure how much that appeal will cost and any other type of future implications coming from this lawsuit. Comment from a different viewer. I fear that when the weather improves, college campuses will continue with the anti-Semitic protests and encampments if they are not shut down immediately. Here's what's interesting, and I agree with you. With the Trump administration, I don't think the federal funding will be quite as lucrative. And now a lot of these, if not all of these campuses, universities, have huge endowments. So they will be safe for a while. But think about and I don't want to get too much into this, but imagine you spent all that money to go to Columbia, for instance, trying to get a good education. Then you go to a job interview and the boss looks and says, well, you went to Columbia. I don't want to look up and see if there's going to be pictures of you online at these anti-Semitic protests next, even if you weren't involved. So I agree with you. I think there will continue to be these protests because it became the quote-unquote popular thing to do to intimidate Jewish students, and the faculty and staff and administration not only allowed it, encouraged it. So I would not see it going away unless the popularity of it has waned. Okay, the Department of Corrections and Community Supervision will temporarily suspend elements of New York's HALT Act and its correctional facilities amid ongoing strikes and protests. The commissioner said in a memo that a number of HALT Act elements that cannot safely be operationalized under a prison-wide state of emergency will be suspended until the facilities can be safely operated, including a memorandum issued February 10th requesting a comprehensive review of security staffing with a goal to cut staff to 70% of current levels. What? There'll be increased overtime rates, these type of things. Additionally, no striking or protesting corrections officers who report to work as of yesterday at noon, regardless of their schedule or shift, will face any discipline. I heard this did not go over stunningly. I heard this, some of these proposals did not soothe the anger. We also learn that state lawmakers, quote, do not support changing a law that limits holding people in prison in solitary confinement for punishment, arguing it would make facilities safer for staff. What I'm boiling this all down to is the Assembly Correction Chair, Mr. Eric Dillon, said there's no support to change the HALT Act. This is Albany, folks. This is what happens when there's one-party rule. Dillon told Spectrum News there's no support for changing HALT right now. You know, we'll talk with Assemblyman Phil Palmisano. I don't want to belabor this because we'll talk to him about that when we come back. Or when we come into the 7 hour. I'm sorry, why did I say that? Also, we'll talk to him about the 20 states that filed a lawsuit to block New York's Superfund Act. That is encouraging. More than 20 states filed a federal lawsuit against New York earlier this month, challenging the constitutionality of the new Climate Change Superfund Act, which will establish regulations seeking to collect roughly $75 billion from companies, some controlled by foreign nations, deemed responsible for greenhouse gas emissions due to their refinement and production of fossil fuel. Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton said New York's law is nothing more than an unconstitutional shakedown of vital American energy industries that form the bedrock of our national economic independence. In return for keeping the lights on and fueling our manufacturing, energy producers are being targeted for destruction by the left-wing policies of New York radicals. So we're encouraged. We knew there would be lawsuits, but we are encouraged by those lawsuits. Speaking of Governor Hochul, she won't remove New York's mayor, quote, yet. Or at this time, at this time. But she's still going after, as the New York Post editorial board, still caving to progressives by punishing Eric Adams and his voters. She won't boot him from office, but instead will merely move to put him on a short leash and undermine him when necessary. So when you think about this, the voters, this is the problem with New York State. The voters said, you know what? We want Eric Adams as mayor. He becomes mayor, starts to work with Trump, and now Hochul says, you know what? I should oust him. And then when she doesn't oust him, tries to keep him on a short leash. And they were actually calling, the left was calling for him to be completely ousted. No New York governor has ever removed a New York City mayor, let alone on such blatantly political and false grounds. Yeah, her cut the baby in half solution isn't much better. She'll erect guardrails to ensure that Adams does what progressives want, as opposed to what the voters who elected him want. So that is an update. I know it's New York City mayor, but it's worth mentioning. But thinking, just to show you how the New York Times, how biased they can be, tell me if you agree with this headline by Mr. Benjamin Orsekis. Facing Trump's threats, New York's governor adopts a Rambo attitude. She's embraced a more aggressive stance as she takes on President Trump, deals with Mayor Adams, and nears a competitive election next year. She invoked Rambo, the Sylvester Stallone film franchise, saying that Mr. Trump would answer for drawing first blood. Let's take a break. I'm running late. I hear the courting whistle. Stay with us. Do you think, when you think of Governor Kathy Hochul, does Rambo come to mind? That's our question this morning. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking.
If you or a loved one regularly used hair relaxers or straighteners and were diagnosed with uterine, ovarian, or endometrial cancer, you may be entitled to significant financial compensation.
I've used hair relaxers for years. I had no idea they could cause cancer.
Chemical hair relaxers and straighteners have been linked to serious conditions, including several types of cancer. If you used hair relaxers and have been diagnosed with uterine, ovarian, or endometrial cancer, call us now. There's no fee unless we win your case. Call today.
Beat the dark days of winter and have a vacation from taxation with the Hesselson's Hot Tub. What better way to start or end every day than with hot water therapy and your very own Hesselson's Hot Tub? With every spot purchase, Hesselson's guarantees great customer satisfaction and the best service team in the area. Plus, with Hesselson's Vacation from Taxation sales event, free steps, free cover lifter, free music, and 0% interest-free financing. Ask about Hesselson's chemical auto ship program and save even more. Stop in today and see why after 70 years it's still fun to poke in the corners at Hesselson's.
Anywhere can record crimes as they happen, and we're going to watch them right here.
He just took his car.
With cameras everywhere, you can run, but you can't hide. Watch iCrime.
The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio. Just quickly, if you did not hear this morning, the Senate border budget triumphs after all-night session while Trump-backed House bill is lagging. So that broke last night around 5. It was a budget blueprint. Just passing that along to you quickly. Oh, waves coming in comments. Let's read some comments. How about that? First up, Ken writes in. Hey, Ken. I have heard in the past from the Democrats that the illegal immigrants are not eligible to receive EBT benefits, Medicaid, and other social benefits. But I just heard that DOJ uncovered the fact that many are receiving benefits, and now it makes sense. Why the Dems let the immigrants into the country? By paroling them. Apparently, the law says that only citizens of the U.S. are eligible for those benefits, but a provision of the law says that illegal immigrants that are on parole are eligible to receive benefits while their cases are reviewed. This also explains why there was no hurry to get them to trial. Oh, very interesting. Thank you, Ken. Thank you for that update, and that does make total sense. Oh, my goodness, so many comments coming in. A lot of good comments. Sorry, I read them before you do, and that's not fair. Good morning, Frank. TGIF. Thanks, Fred. TGIF. Absolutely. All right, another comment. How can Hochul be a Rambo as she made a law for law-abiding citizens having to get a pistol permit or to buy a semi-automatic hunting rifle? Yeah, it's a very watered-down Rambo she is portraying. Someone even wrote in Rambo LOL. I'm going to put that down as 2. No, Hochul doesn't remind them of Rambos. How's that? Mark also writes in, well, to change the HALT law, Governor Hochul will need $3 billion to change it, when she could just drop it and say I made a bad law. Thank you. Further, this is a different viewer. Further proof that Hochul is unfit. 2 major lawsuits in a 30-day span. Now add idiotic micromanagement. More businesses will soon exit the state. Yes, and the number that we'll never actually know, those that are never going to consider coming to New York, those that maybe were considering until something like the Climate Change Superfund went into effect. So yes, it does not help the business climate. And let's face it, don't you wish she was as tough on, well, I guess, public safety as she is on some of this tough talk, like on congestion pricing? I wish she was as tough on public safety, keeping us safe, as tough in protecting our corrections officers, as tough on bringing businesses to New York as she is tough on making sure she keeps that tax on common everyday New Yorkers in the city. Final comment in this segment. In the case of Sheriff Allard, the group that is bringing the appeal needs to treat the money being spent as if it was their own. I guarantee it would not go forward. I couldn't agree more, and we're going to talk about that more in depth. I know it frustrates a lot of people, and that's why we talk on this program how important it is to pay attention to who you're voting locally, what's going on locally. I know it's very difficult to find that information sometimes, but that's why we're trying to bring it to you on this program and get you all the information you need to know. Oh, also, what was your thoughts of former Republican leader Mitch McConnell will not seek re-election after 7 terms? I'm not really shocked. I would have been more shocked if he said he was seeking re-election in the year 2026. So Mitch McConnell essentially retiring. I want to how am I doing on time? We're doing all right. We're doing fine. There's an interesting kind of a list of what Trump has done thus far to go against and question the bias in the media. And I thought it's worth mentioning to you because we talk about the media so often on this program. Trump and his allies launched at least that we know of 7 offenses. FCC probing PBS NPR to uncover if they violated government rules by recognizing financial sponsors on the air. 2, FCC investigating Comcast, NBC's Universal's diversity, equity, and inclusion practices. 3, FCC probing CBS as to whether or not it violated rules when it edited former Vice President Kamala Harris's 60 Minutes interview. 4, Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene demanding NPR and PBS testify at a Department of Government Efficiency subcommittee hearing on systemically biased content. 5, Defense Department cutting NPR, NBC News, Politico, and CNN from their workspaces at the Pentagon. 6, Executive branch canceling subscriptions to establishment media outlets such as Politico and 7. White House banning the Associated Press from events at the Oval Office and Air Force One over the outlet's refusal to drop speech codes. Now, this, of course, has created so much consternation from the media. We saw Jim Acosta saying that who is no longer relevant, if he ever was, no longer has an outlet other than maybe a podcast or something, saying that they should all band together, all reporters, and not attend these Trump functions. Okay. Axios' Sarah Fisher claimed Trump is conducting bullying and harassment campaigns, punishing media companies more than any leader since America's founding. Brian Stetler accused Trump of embracing the position of word police. The list can go on and on. They hate being called out on this. But what's interesting is they're being called out on this by Trump, but it's what we've already all known. It's why their ratings are plummeting. It's why people are let me try that again, that the media is no longer trusted in any way, that they no longer have any type of credence, that they have no type of credibility, that was their own doing. They didn't need to be called out for that. We saw it with our own eyes. Now it's just going further and saying, especially with NPR and PBS, you're not going to get taxpayers' dollars if you're going to do this. Or, hey, we're not going to have these federal bureaucracies paying for subscriptions for your outlets. So, yeah, they're calling it an attack. Well, Stephen Miller called out the White House press. This was yesterday's press briefing. The White House Deputy Chief of Staff for Policy responded to a question comparing media concerns about Elon Musk serving as a, quote, unelected bureaucrat while ignoring former President Joe Biden's declining mental state. You're tempting me to say very harsh things about some of our media friends, Stephen Miller started. It is true that many of the people in this room for 4 years failed to cover the fact that Joe Biden was mentally incompetent and was not running the country. It is also true that many people in this room who have used this talking point that Elon is not elected fail to understand how government works. So I'm glad for the opportunity for a brief civics lesson. A president is elected by the whole American people. He's the only official in the entire government that is elected by the entire nation, right? Judges are appointed. Members of Congress are elected at the district or state level. The Constitution, Article 2, has a clause known as the vesting clause, and it says the executive power shall be vested in a president, singular. The whole will of democracy is imbued into the elected president. The president then appoints staff to then impose that democratic will onto the government. The threat to democracy, indeed the existential threat to democracy, is the unelected bureaucracy of lifetime tenured civil servants who believe they answer to no one, who believe they can do whatever they want without consequences, who believe they can set their own agenda no matter what Americans voted for. Did he not hit this out of the park? What President Trump is doing is removing federal bureaucrats who are defying democracy by failing to implement his lawful orders, which are the will of the whole of the American people. That is so important that he touched on that, this idea that an unelected person is it's a threat to democracy that an unelected person, i.e. Elon Musk, is going after unelected bureaucrats, those same bureaucrats who think they're smarter than the voter, who think they should have the say more so than Donald Trump. Unelected, faceless bureaucrats. Taking a break because we're running late, having a blast on the program this morning. Stay with us.
At John G. Ullman & Associates, our clients come first. As a fiduciary, we build personalized plans rooted in our shared ethics and values.
And you've been doing this for 45 years?
Yes, our in-house team creates custom plans built for you and your family.
We like the idea of a relationship that lasts.
That's what we're all about, helping you and your family build and protect wealth for generations. John G. Ullman & Associates, here for everything your money touches.
Are you or someone you love at risk of falling in the home? Did you know 80% of home falls happen in the bathroom? If you are still stepping over a tub to take a shower, please call Bath Planet for a free design service. Our certified design team will take all the measurements and work with you to design a bathroom that never has to sacrifice style for safety. Go with the company that people trust. Bath Planet, 2 locations serving the entirety of the Twin Tiers. Call today.
New year.
And for millions of New Yorkers, that means more money in your pocket. For the second year in a row, the minimum wage in New York State has gone up. Both this year and next, the minimum wage is increasing 50 cents per hour. That means an additional $2,000 to spend on all the things you and your family need. Then, in 2027, the minimum wage will be tied to inflation, which means increases will match costs. New York's new minimum wage, putting money directly into the pockets of New Yorkers who need it.
The Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security and Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We got to make this segment quick as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio because I'm running late. Let's go through a couple of viewer comments. The question was asked because the New York Times and Governor Hochul herself compared essentially herself to Rambo. New York Times compared her to Rambo. Your thoughts? Well, this viewer writes, far from Rambo, more like Bozo the Clown. Thank you very much. Comment from a different viewer. Big cheers right on about the faceless, unelected bureaucrats. Yes, Stephen Miller hit that out of the park. And there's a point to be made that there's so much scrutiny on Elon Musk. What about the people behind the scenes when Biden was obviously in cognitive decline, who were, as people have said on this program so often, the puppets controlled behind the scenes? They were nameless, faceless bureaucrats, unelected. So, as we wrap up this hour, remember Assemblyman Phil Palmisano in the next hour. But first, the question was asked by the New York Post editorial board, or not really a question, but I pose it as a question to you. Paying down the debt will help Americans vastly more than the Doge dividend. So they're suggesting just using it to pay off the debt as best as we can. It's not going to pay off all the debt, but pay down as much as we can. Instead of sending out those $5,000 checks. All right, well, you may have a little bit of time in the next hour to cover a few other things, but that's our question. Also, when you think of Hochul, do you think of Rambo? We'll be right back. Hour number 1 in the books. Hour number 2, mere moments away.
If you or a loved one regularly used hair relaxers or straighteners and were diagnosed with uterine, ovarian, or endometrial cancer, you may be entitled to significant financial compensation.
I've used hair relaxers for years. I had no idea they could cause cancer.
Chemical hair relaxers and straighteners have been linked to serious conditions, including several types of cancer. If you used hair relaxers and have been diagnosed with uterine, ovarian, or endometrial cancer, call us now. There's no fee unless we win your case. Call today.
Let the dark days of winter and have a vacation from taxation with the Hesselson's Hot Tub. What better way to start or end every day than with hot water therapy and your very own Hesselson's Hot Tub? With every spa purchase, Hesselson's guarantees great customer satisfaction and the best service team in the area. Plus, with Hesselson's Vacation from Taxation sales event, free steps, free cover lifter, free music, and 0% interest-free financing. Ask about Hesselson's chemical auto ship program and save even more. Stop in today and see why after 70 years it's still fun to poke in the corners at Hesselson's.
Power up, America. The Ford President's Day sales event is here. Save on the vehicles that will take you places, give you a surge of productivity, and a new sense of freedom. So head to your local Ford store, because it's time to get in the driver's seat. A special offer for Jeep and GM owners. Lease a Bronco Sport for $289 a month for 36 months. Only at your local Ford stores.
Hour number 2 of Frankly Speaking. Thank you so much for joining us as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street in Corning. Got a couple of comments here, wrapping up from the last hour. The turtle can't get out the door soon enough, meaning Mitch McConnell. I could see more retirements coming as MAGA and MAH. How do you say that? M-A-H-A, Make America Healthy Again. Is there a way everybody's saying it? It's difficult for me. To push a new way of doing business. Lighting up the Senate. Well, let me redo that because I broke into asking how to pronounce it. I can see more retirements coming as MAGA and Make America Healthy Again push a new way of doing business. Lighting up the Senate phone lines over every vote like we did with confirmations will crimp their ability to pass unseen uniparty legislation. Thank you, Fred. Oh, we have another one that suggests when they see Hochul, they don't see Rambo. They see more of a bozo. Thank you for that. And then this, I thought this was a very good point. Thank you for this, viewer. Dr. Fauci was not elected. He was paid $1 million a year of taxpayer money. And also think of the power that he had during COVID. What a great point. Trump and Musk are serving we the people at no costs. Another great point. Trump's salary this year is donated to homeless veterans. Thank you. Maha. Is that right? Maha. It's not as easy as MAGA. Maha. That makes sense. Thank you. It is my understanding that interest exceeds $2 trillion on our debt. I think we are dangling on a cliff paying down this debt. Yes. I think that's what I think. If I can judge the room, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of people would rather see the Doge dividends go to paying down the debt as compared to sending a check to everyone. Now that's tricky because it's kind of, if you get deeper down to it, is it every taxpayer? Is it every household? Is it everybody, like a stimulus? So people that don't pay taxes but somehow seem to get a huge tax return every year, will they be receiving it? Yeah, so that's a very good question to add into that. So I get your point. But employees, tell me if this strikes fear in your heart. This is coming from CNN. Employees describe chaos, heightened emotion, and added security at IRS offices following firings. Following thousands of firings yesterday at the Internal Revenue Service, workers described chaotic scenes, heightened security, and charged emotions playing out at a tax agency's location across the country. IRS employees, four IRS employees in Memphis, Atlanta, and Dallas, who are also warning of the potential for delayed tax refunds for Americans set to file their tax returns in the coming weeks. The employees, who continue to work for the IRS, spoke on condition of anonymity for fear of retribution. Well, heaven forbid, you don't have maybe 3 people doing one person's job, or remember how many IRS agents that Biden hired. What was being done before that? Emotions are high. People are arguing with management, throwing books, kicking chairs in frustration. Oh, that does sound like chaos. The bottom line is this wasn't handled with care, and these people have no idea where their next paycheck will come from. Employees are crying. Managers are crying. We're losing really good employees. It's very gloomy, and everyone is very angry. Americans awaiting and depending on their tax refunds could also feel the effects of the agency's mass firing in the middle of the tax filing season. CNN previously reported that the agency was firing about 6,000 probationary workers. How many? So that means they haven't even been there a year. How many wasn't the number that Biden hired? So we're talking about 6,000 here. Of course, for whatever reason, the media and politicians are trying to strike fear in your heart, which I just don't think this works, by scaring you that Doge is going after the IRS. Why pick IRS as your poster child for something that should strike fear in the hearts of Americans? Yes, I know a lot of people depend on their tax refund. I'm not knocking that. But nothing's changed on that unless you have the IRS agents that are still there try to gum up the works, the bureaucrats try to gum up the works to slow down the tax returns as a punishment or retribution to Trump and Doge. I could see that. Because again, just like Stephen Miller was saying, and we're adding on to it, that the bureaucracy, the nameless, faceless, unelected bureaucrats, and we heard about this in the first term of Trump as well, that they thought they were more powerful. They thought they had more say. They thought they were smarter than you, the voter, smarter than Trump, and that it should be their system. It should be their way of doing things and not what you, the American people, voted for. Because there was a cockiness there because their jobs seem so untouchable. But with Doge, that is no longer the case. Hence, the chaos. I mean, kicking chairs, getting mad. I mean, is this chaos? I think that's kind of a loose definition of chaos, but we know the media, how quickly they like to throw around the term chaos. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick described what Trump's ultimate goal in this is. His goal is to abolish the International Revenue Service and let all the outsiders pay. Wow. As the president said, reciprocal tariffs, either you bring yours down or we're going to bring ours up. If we go to their level, it will earn us $700 billion a year to be equal to everybody else. And there goes our deficit, and interest rates come smashing down, and the whole economy explodes higher. So that is the ultimate goal. But the media is telling us that Trump's legislative agenda is in turmoil and that Trump's honeymoon is over. Well, there you go. All right, we got the Assemblyman coming in the studio right now. So stay with us. We will be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox.
Discover a path to receiving an exceptional educational experience with all costs covered. That's our mission. Find your future at Milton Hershey School.
Hard water makes it hard to keep your home looking like the work of art you've always envisioned it would be. Culligan softeners reduce hard water buildup and your cleaning time, transforming every drop, every splash, every rinse into the fine art of a long-lasting clean. With a Culligan water softener, revel in the breathtaking beauty of your home, just the way you've always pictured it. Culligan, water you love.
Top-notch education, housing, healthcare, food, clothing, technology, and much more is provided to our students at no cost to our family. This is thanks to the generosity of our founder.
It's a season of sharing.
Having a good time has always been my #1 goal. I tend to get crazy. At my age, I should not be jumping up and down like that. And if you don't know what I mean, ask your mama. The young ones, y'all like, we don't know what you're talking about. But I promise you, in 30 years, you will.
It's the best time in daytime.
Weekdays at 2 p.m. on Big Fox.
Shell Missy face off in
Why can't we watch DuckTales? Because we don't learn anything.
Book Smarts versus Street Smarts.
Is it working? Are you feeling motivated? Very.
It's the battle of twins.
Life is so confusing. I always hoped it would be easier for me when I grew up. It's gonna be all right. You were faking. Bazinga.
Young Sheldon.
Weeknights at 6:30 on
The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are back with Frankly Speaking, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. And in that studio, we have Assemblyman Phil Palmisano. Let me find the right angle. There we go. Hey, Phil, how are you this morning?
Good morning, Frank. How are you?
Good. We're going to go through some viewer comments. Some of them may not make sense to you. I'll explain them if not, because they're not really questions for you, Phil. But I want to make sure we get to everybody here. Ken writes in, Frank, I just saw an ad on Big Fox from New York State detailing the minimum wage increase. In 2027, the minimum wage will be increased in relationship to inflation. I may not be a financial wizard, but if inflation drives minimum wage and wages particularly drive inflation, this tactic sounds like we will be in an endless upward spiral that feeds itself. That's a good point. Another viewer said, yes, pay down the debt. The money being recovered is borrowed money, so just cancel the debt. Okay, that's in reference to Doge. And then this one, I think, is going to confuse Phil. Rambo, Hochul reminds me of the green scum that collects on a swamp. So they were calling Hochul Rambo in the New York Times. And so I'm asking the question, when people see Governor Hochul, do they think of Rambo? Scott writes in, and I'm not going to go into detail what he said, but he does not see Rambo in Hochul. You think Rambo, tough talking? Governor Hochul? Okay, no, we'll talk about that later. I threw you off guard on that.
That's all right.
All right, so Assemblyman Phil Palmisano is our guest. We've got to start with the big story of the day, and that's the correctional facility strike. This is kind of fascinating to watch. We get a lot of corrections officers that watch this program, so we've seen pictures, we've heard from people on the ground. What are your thoughts so far?
Well, I went over to visit the CEOs over at Elmira yesterday. Myself, Assemblyman Friend, Senator O'Mara couldn't be there, but his Chief of Staff, Sarah Ladden, who's actually husband, was a retired CEO.
Right.
Where the three of us were there. Senator O'Mara's out of town, so Bond sent his regards as well. So, I mean, it's terrible what's going on. I mean, this was a creation of the governor and the progressives in the legislature with their failed policies. I mean, you start out with the prison closures over the years, 25 plus prison closures, taking away tools and resources to help our corrections officers be safe and to help protect other inmates. I mean, you have the HALT's the biggest one.
Yes.
That, and for the viewer, HALT was a tool. Basically prohibited our corrections officers and restricted their use of a tool to segregate the most dangerous and violent inmates from the rest of the general population. So if someone was being disruptive, dangerous, they could segregate them from the rest of the general population. So this basically severely restricts and sometimes eliminates that option. So there are no penalties or repercussions for bad behavior, and they know that. And it's just
it's basically the prison version of bail reform in a way.
Yes, it's kind of like in reverse, but again, taking away more tools and resources from law enforcement, and also really the way I view it, it really tips the scales of justice more in favor of the inmate, in favor of the criminal, versus the law enforcement and the corrections officers inside those facilities, even the civilian staff. It makes it more difficult. It basically sides with the criminal over crime victims and their families and public safety.
I'm glad, and I'm proud of this too, Phil, and it's because of you. We've been talking about the HALT Act so long on this program that I think viewers of the program were well aware of how bad it was. So when this happened, it wasn't a surprise to them.
No, and what these policies and what we've seen is the violence and the dangerousness of the prisoners. It's a dangerous powder keg environment. Now, when we passed the HALT Act, after year one, we saw a spike in the assaults, inmate on staff, and of course inmate on inmate. After year one, the progressives and the Democrats said, no, we need more data, we need more stats. After year two, we need more data and stats. So after 3 years, I think the data speaks for itself. And since we implemented HALT 3 years ago, April 22, inmate on staff assaults are up 76%. They've increased from a little over 1,100 to just over 2,000, 76% increase. But here's a more staggering number. Inmate on inmate assaults are up 169%, increase from a little over 1,100 to just under 3,000 in that period of time. I mean, it's a powder keg environment in those correctional facilities. And then you have even contraband seizures are up 32%, going from 3,500 to 4,700 in that period of time. The data proves it. The HALT Act is a failed experiment. It's a dangerous experiment that should be repealed. And that's what we're talking. The governor, I mean, to repeal the bill, the law, you have the governor, the legislature has to pass the bill, and the governor to sign it. But the governor does have the authority. She can declare an executive order and suspend the HALT Act. You know, during COVID, the governor suspended laws and implemented what he wanted to do during an emergency. And it is a state of emergency inside our correctional facilities. We have a tremendous staffing crisis inside our correctional facilities. And what you see is, because of the shortage, we have like 2,200 open correction officer positions. And then last week, before the budget hearing, the Commissioner of Corrections came out with this memo and sent it down to the departments. 70% is the new 100%. What that meant is they were going to eliminate positions and posts. These are posts that are vacant, and they were going to do that not because they weren't important or needed, but because they couldn't fill them. So that wouldn't have solved the staffing crisis. It would have solved it on paper. It would have hit it on paper. So they can say they can kind of doctor the numbers. And that just doesn't make sense. I mean, all that is going to do is just going to continue to exacerbate the crisis that we have going on in our correctional facilities. So what do you do about it? I mean, last year, if you recall, the governor, they proposed closing facilities, and during the budget comments, the Commissioner of Corrections, he said it during the hearing, he said it to me when I met personally with him, he said, we have to close down facilities because we have a staffing crisis. I'm like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
We have staffing crises in our hospitals and nursing homes. You don't see us close them down. What do? You do recruitment bonuses. You do retention bonuses. You increase the pay. And I said to the Commissioner of Corrections last week at the budget hearing, the starting salary of a CO is $56,000. That's woefully inadequate.
Yeah, for that
I
job.
think after 7 years, it's about $72,000. I mean, granted, with the overtime, because they're working massive overtimes, they can make more money. But it just doesn't set up the right process. And talking to the CEOs yesterday, they said this isn't about money. This is about quality of life, seeing their families. When you get mandated, when you go in for an 8-hour shift, and you say, well, you have to stay for a 16-hour shift. So no, you have to stay for 24-hour shifts, missing valuable time with your family. That's not safe.
No.
That is not the way to do this. And so we need to.
How is it even? I mean, I know this is kind of an ignorant question, Phil, but how is it even legal? Just because it's a state? Because if my boss came to me and said you have to go on the air for 24 hours. I'd be calling the Department of Labor.
Right. They can do this. They lock the doors on them and said. And here's the other thing that is kind of mind blowing to me. The inmates, they get their iPads and they got phone calls. when those CEOs go inside the facility, they have to lock their phones. They can't bring their phones in. So they can't call their spouse. They can't call their kids. They can't Zoom with their kids to say goodnight to them. I mean, whose side are we on here? What do we when we want people to take this job and we have this staffing crisis? I mean, we get 2,200 short. Yeah. So we did aggressively, I think, recruitment bonuses, retention bonuses. Yes. And the other thing, the governor has vetoed this bill 2 years in a row. It's called the death gamble legislation for the viewer out there. So when a CEO, they have to have it hit at 25 years to secure their retirement, and then they can retire at 25 years. But if they say they want to work beyond their 25 years because they know that the help is needed and they want to work a little longer for personal financial reasons, like we all do, sure, that pension is not secure. So say they were to die, if they've been there 27 years and they were to die, that pension that they earned would not be secured for their spouse or their loved one. All that would do is basically they get a death benefit like 3 times their final average salary, which is not anywhere near than securing that pension. We could pass this death thing, but it passed unanimously in both houses 2 years in a row.
She just won't sign it.
The governor vetoed it, and her excuse was, we need to do it as part of the budget. Well, then, Governor, why didn't you put it in your budget? I mean, my God.
She makes it crystal clear where she stands.
Yes.
I mean, and it always goes back to tying the hands of law enforcement and coddling the criminals. But I wanted to ask you, not really ask you this, Phil, but one of the things that I think's overlooked, and I know we talked about in this program a lot, so you've got the corrections officers and all that they go through, and then she says we want to close prisons, and oh, by the way, what was it? You'll get 30 days? Yeah. Couldn't even respect, like,
it
was 90 days.
Under the law, the governor could close down any correctional facility with a 1-year notification. She doesn't need the legislature. So, and this started under her predecessor, Governor Cuomo. Yeah. And they started with these 90-day closure notifications. And that's just a slap and insult to the face of these corrections officers and their families, because think about it, 90 days, and you have to uproot your family to try to find a new school, a new home within a 90-day period. That's just wrong. Mm-hmm. I mean, they say, well, we have to do 90 days is better because it helps smooth out the process. They feel they're going to save it. No, it just shows a little bit of respect for them. For
which we
don't
do. We do not show respect for them.
And that's the thing. I mean, I knew people who worked up at Livingston County Correctional Facilities. That got closed down. Then they went to Gowanda. That got closed down. Then they go to Southport, and that got closed down.
Upending their whole family.
Yeah, upending their whole family. And so, you have these prison closures, and you have the staffing issues, mandatory issues, and that's what they said when they talked to us. When I was talking to them yesterday, and I mean, and the thing about it is, and for the viewers, I mean, you recognize what's going on there because you see the CEOs out there protesting. I don't use the word strike, frankly, protest or demonstrating, but they beep their horn when they go by because they see them and they want to show support, and the outpouring of support from the community. Bringing food. Senator Mayor, myself, and some of my friends brought some pizza and water for them. Yeah. But they. Normally, when they're not there, Frank, what do people do? They drive by that big building on the hill, and they drive by, and they don't know what's going on there. They don't want to know what's going on there. The only thing they know is that they want the bad people to stay inside the correctional facility, stay inside the jails, and not be outside of them. Yeah. But we need to. But what they also don't know is that our corrections officers are under a constant assault and attack inside those facilities, being constantly attacked. I get memos all the time of slashings or cuts or bruises or concussion. It happens every single day, and it's just unfortunately dismissed by the leadership at DOCS and the governor because they don't do enough, and they'll sometimes they try to dismiss the assaults. Yeah. Like, well, it's not a major thing. I mean, I've heard the horror stories, being feces thrown on them, urine thrown on them, everything you can imagine. That's what they go through each and every day. I mean, also in New York, by the way, this was brought to our attention from other SEALs. I talked to the corrections officers out of New York City, Rikers. If an inmate creates what they call a sexual assault or a forcible touching or something like that against a CO, it's a misdemeanor. It's not about a felony. Are you kidding me? I mean, what kind of respect are we showing these individuals? But we want to increase assaults on transit workers and others to a felony, but not for our CEOs. And there just seems to be this animosity for whatever reason against our corrections officers.
And there's no denying the numbers like that you've read. I saw the Congressman Langworthy spoke on this. There's no denying the increase in violence in the prisons. So when I saw today on Empire Report, Phil, that the Assembly Correction Chair said there's no support to change the HALT Act.
I saw that too, and I know Eric DeLon, he's a good guy, but he's wrong.
Yeah.
And that's why it's critical for the governor to act unilaterally. If she's concerned about what's going inside these facilities, if she wants these individuals to be back in the workplace, they know they're at a tipping point. We've passed that tipping point. That's why they want to be in there, but they're just so they're scared for their families, they're scared for their own well-being. The governor has the authority to suspend the HALT Act. You know, she made that comment, do your job. I was talking to a local media, I said, Governor, do your job. Yeah. Help repeal and suspend the HALT Act. Governor, do your job. Give these corrections officers the tools and resources they need to be safe, to protect themselves. Governor, do your job. Give the corrections officers tools and resources they need to keep the other inmates safe. Mm-hmm. Governor, do your job so these corrections officers can have a life and a quality of life and not be mandated for triple shifts. Yeah. Be aggressive. If you want more corrections officers, we have to pay better pay and benefits. I mean, even the retirement benefit, I mean, it's a 25-year retirement benefit. It should be a 20-year retirement. They're they're law enforcement, just like our state police. Why should they be 25 and not 20? But here's the thing with their pension benefits, Frank. At 25 years, they would retire with 50%. But if they want to stay longer, say that they are risking their pension for their spouse if they were to die during service. Say they wanted to stay 25, 27, 30 years. Normally, you would get an enhancement of that benefit, that pension each year, a certain percentage. It doesn't go up any further. They might make more money, and it might be based on more money. That's inequity in the pension system. I mean, they made some changes to the tiers. Those are things that we can be looking at. So we have to have an aggressive recruitment and retention. We should be paying recruitment bonuses. We should be paying retention bonuses, so the longer they're there, we can entice them to stay longer so they can have some protections. And we need to pass this death gamble, put it in the budget so that these corrections officers have their pensions secured for their family, their spouse or loved ones and their families moving forward. And let's make it so they don't have mandatory double time or triple time. And if they do, I mean, if the triple time is just absurd. That should not even be. We shouldn't be talking about that. Illegal. And in my perspective, if you're mandated to work 2 8-hour shifts, 16 hours straight, you should have a full 24 hours off, minimally. I mean, so those are some things we really need to be aggressively looking at about. And I know I think some of the things she's saying, well, if you stay or come back, we'll give you 2.5 times. It's not about the money, but we have to address the money. Yeah. But they need the two big things that they were talking about are the safety and their quality of life. We have a staffing crisis and a safety crisis going on in our correctional facilities, and it's long past due to act.
And think about the PSAs that we've seen so often about take care of your mental health.
Yeah.
And imagine being put in this situation where your life is being threatened, and even when it's not being threatened, it's not the most pleasant work environment. You're being forced to do all of this overtime, and then you get zero respect from the governor in Albany.
It is. I mean, it's kind of like defund the police, but inside.
Inside,
because we've gone through it about the defund the police movement, the attack on our law enforcement, whether it's at the state level or even the local level under some circumstances we've seen here.
Yes.
Quite frankly. Yeah. So we need to be more aggressive. And if government, we need an aggressive recruitment and retention package. They said we increase pay. You've increased it. And I said to the commissioner, woefully inadequate. And I think he seemed miffed by my statement, but it's woefully inadequate. We need to do a better job. We have to protect these individuals. They go to work every day, just like our law enforcement on the street. They could say goodbye to their spouse. They don't know what's going to happen, and we don't know if they're going to come back. And quite frankly, that's the way it's getting inside our correctional facilities as well. And I would be remiss. I want to say the tragedy, what happened to Mr. Brooks, was unacceptable. Violence in any means, in any way, is unacceptable in our correctional facilities. And those individuals, what happened to him was absolutely horrific, totally unacceptable. And those individuals should be held accountable. And even the corrections officers union leadership said, yes, this isn't reflective of the, I think, 17,000 plus corrections officers that are working in the state. But safety needs to be a paramount inside our correctional facilities, and violence should not be accepted under any circumstances. So why, obviously, so everyone's speaking out about Mr. Brooks, and that's right, we should be.
Yes.
But where are the Democrats and where is Governor Hochul about the violence that's going on inside our correctional facilities that are making our staff unsafe, but also the inmates unsafe? Because I saw the numbers, I'll say them again. Since the implementation of HALT, a failed experiment, inmate assaults are up over 169%. These are their numbers.
Yes.
Going from 1,100 to just about 3,000, and same thing with inmate on staff, up 76%, going from a little over 1,100 to a little over 2,000. This is unacceptable. We can and must do better. We have to be aggressive. This is unsustainable. This is not safe, and we must act. We must act now.
We've got to take a short break. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox.
Have you been unable to work for over a year due to a mental or physical disability?
Were you recently denied Social Security disability benefits? Great news. You may be eligible for money, back pay, relief.
If you've been pre-qualified and diagnosed with a recognized condition that prohibits you from working, our lawyers can file a claim to get your disability benefit.
Call us today and find out more.
Call now, 844-617-0440.
Power up, America. The Ford President's Day sales event is here. Save on the vehicles that will take you places, give you a surge of productivity, and a new sense of freedom. So head to your local Ford store, because it's time to get in the driver's seat. Right now, get a Ford F-150 hybrid truck with up to $11,999 total savings, only at your local Ford stores.
Anyone, anywhere can record crimes as they happen, and we're going to watch them right here.
He just took his car.
With cameras everywhere, you can run, but you can't hide. Watch iCrime.
Name something with a diamond in it.
Diamondback rattlesnake.
It's in the name. Name a low-calorie food you might make your edible underwear out of.
Salmon.
Watch it weeknights. Share it the next day.
Wild caught Norwegian teriyaki.
Share in the fun. Weeknights on Family Feud.
7 and 7:30 on Big.
The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security and Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are back live in the Hesselson studio. We're being joined by Assemblyman Phil Palmisano. Phil, we're going to go through a couple of comments here. First, we have our wave counter on the bottom of the screen. Well, someone wants me to do a blue wave for our corrections officers. I don't have that capability, but in spirit. Okay. Good morning, Frank. As it pertains to the prison strikes, might I suggest that the Albany politicians take 2 weeks working in the prison so they know what the issue really is? That's a good idea, right?
That's a good point.
Mark writes in and said he saw you taking up the correction cause. Hats off to you, Phil. So that's nice.
Always.
Yeah, of course. Comment from a different viewer. It sounds like the jailers have become prisoners. It really does. And how their hands have been tied.
Yeah, it's like putting the handcuffs on law enforcement and not on the criminals, whether it's out here in the community with the policies and now inside the correctional facilities, which we've been seeing time and time again.
Has Governor Hochul ever approached or even talked to a corrections officer? Good point. Can the Assembly impeach the governor due to public safety and incompetence? They could, but of course it's a one-party rule. And
elections work well too.
Yeah, I know. Exactly. It's that simple. Next year.
Vote.
Next year. And good morning, guys. Just a thought. If any inmate breaks any rule, then they will receive an additional 1 year in prisons. No question asked. There you go. How are the guys doing on the ground, Phil, when you visited yesterday?
Well, the morale's down.
Yeah.
No question about it. They're scared. They're worried. Mm-hmm. They want to be in there, but they've hit a tipping point. They've hit a breaking point. I mean, and they, time and time again, they say, listen, this isn't about money.
No.
This is about our safety. I mean, we don't know what's going to happen. We know what's going to happen. We're going to be under assault. And we want to see our families. We want to see our kids grow up. We come in for an 8-hour shift. We don't know if we're going to be here for 24 hours straight. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's just not the way to treat our employees. And the reason, obviously, they're doing this stuff is because we have a massive staffing shortage crisis. But that's why the governor and the legislature need to lead on. They have to be more aggressive. What they've been doing obviously isn't working. So we have to take a more aggressive approach. That's why I've said it time again. Bump the pay. Bump the benefits, recruitment bonuses, retention bonuses, path to death gamble. Let's fix the retirement system so it's more attractive for them. Let's not penalize them if they want to work more than the 25 years. Let's make it a 20-year. Those things will help. It's going to take time. I mean, one proposal that I've heard is not a bad proposal is to allow out-of-state, because we're along the PA border, to come in and work because they've been prohibited. I mean, I think that's a proposal for them. I'll give her credit. That's a good proposal. Even some of the CEOs there brought it up. I'm like, that's a proposal which they weren't aware about. Yeah. But we got to give them the tools and resources. The drugs are getting into facilities. I mean, I have the commissioner always talks about having drug dogs and rotating. There should be a drug dog at every correctional facility.
There should.
At every correctional facility. We need to do a better job on the the packaging screening and the mail screening, because what they do, And here's the other thing I found out yesterday, which I did not realize. You know, they spent, I think, $80+ million for body scanners to scan. So with the idea of it, you come in as a visitor, you have to sit and be scanned, make sure you don't have drugs on you.
Sure. And
as an inmate, after you meet with it, you'd have to go sit on the scanner. They're optional. You can opt out of it.
Well, who's going to go through it?
Exactly. And here's an example.
How is that even the case? Could you do that at an airport?
I think there are some. We're looking into them. I think there's some federal rules and regulations with that, but it's a little different.
Yeah.
I mean, so to think about it, if a visitor comes in, they smuggle drugs on them. They don't have a drug dog there that day because the drug dogs would sniff it out. That's why there should be one at every correctional facility. They refuse the body scanner. Then they still get to go meet with their loved one.
Yeah.
Smuggle them drugs. Now that they may somehow, because of the staffing situation, they can't see everything, swallow drugs and it's in their system.
Yeah.
And they say, I'm not doing the scanner, you can just pat me down. But the pat down doesn't see the drugs in the system, but if they were in a scanner, they would. This doesn't make any sense. So it's provide them the tools and resources they need. So it's the pay, the benefits, but it's more the safety and the staffing issues. So we need to pay benefits, the recruitment, to get more staff. We have to do that, but then we have to give them the tools and resources. Let them be able to segregate the most violent and dangerous inmates from the rest of the general population. Have the drug dogs at every single facility, not just a select few and rotating them. Make them go through these body scanners. I don't know what the reason is. I got to find out. I just found out about that yesterday. I'm blown away.
Yeah. It sounds right.
They have to, because you've seen instances, some of the correctional facilities where 20+ were overcome by some sort of substance. So, if they're getting exposure to fentanyl.
Yeah.
I mean, I've heard even at the county jail, I've heard one time what they do is they bake the drugs into pages of the books and then they crumble it. I mean, you don't think that's how creative they are. I've heard of things.
Well, they're criminals. That's what they're
criminals,
known for.
yes.
Yeah.
So we need to show our CEOs that we're with them and give them all the tools and resources they need to be safe instead of taking them away. Yeah. And again, it's just, to me, it seems like the scales of justice are tipping in favor of the criminals and the inmates over our law enforcement inside our correctional facilities, just like it seems like the scales of justice are tipped in the favor of the criminals on the street versus our law enforcement on the street. We're putting the handcuffs on our law enforcement and not the criminals, and it should be the other way around.
So what, one quick on this. I think it's so amazing how the community has been supporting this. The food and seeing the pictures. I mean, it's wonderful. And you've got to know their dedication and why this is so important to them. When they chose this week, even as cold as it was on Monday to start this, that goes to show you how fed up they are.
Well, it goes to, the pattern. We had the budget hearing last week, but also the same week, the day before the budget hearing, they had in Collins Correctional Facility, you had inmates take over a couple of the dorms. Yeah. So that's a pattern. Then they came out with that ridiculous memo, 70 is a new 100. No, it's not. It shouldn't be. And it wasn't. They're going to literally eliminate posts and positions that are vacant. Not because they're not needed or critical to safety, because they couldn't fill them. So it would help them solve their staffing crisis on paper, but it wouldn't solve the staffing crisis.
What was the deal yesterday where Hochul said that they were going to halt some of the...
I
shouldn't use halt
right.
to stop the halt.
And I saw that
it seems like it was...
Because they sent out a memo to the corrections officers from... And I read through it. And it doesn't go far enough, in my opinion. And I've made that message. But, I will say it shouldn't be dismissed out of hand, because if she's saying that's a recognition that there's a problem. But I think it needs a lot more clarity, because it said temporarily suspends. And it says parts of it. What parts? What's temporarily mean?
That's what I got from it.
The fact of the matter is they don't trust her. I don't trust her, because what they were saying is that we all go back into work, and then the next day she puts halt back in. Now, I don't think personally that's what she would do, because she would get skewered publicly by all of us, and she'd lose a lot more credibility. Yeah. You have to, and she has the ability, like I said, to declare, suspend the HALT Act, and I think there's a emergency declared in our correctional facilities. I think it was before this past week too. So it has to be an emergency inside our correctional facilities, because we have a staffing crisis, right?
Right.
So she could suspend the HALT Act. In my opinion, indefinitely would have been a better word than temporarily, but it's got to be technically temporary, because you can't eliminate it altogether. And of course there'll be challenges. You have some of the progressive radicals saying, that's ridiculous, that's disappointing. Are you kidding me? We need to protect not just the law enforcement officers, the correctional, but the other inmates. And there are some inmates, they don't like the fact that HALT's gone. You have some inmates, and I hear stories, Frank, and to the viewers, there's some that just want to attack our CEOs and hurt them. There's just some, they're bad people, they should be segregated. But there are others they don't want to be in the general population because they're afraid. They know the only way they get segregated, because you can have a temporary segregation, but it's not a permanent segregation, or a longer term segregation, which might be needed in cases. We need to give them the discretion, just like we need to give judges discretion on setting bail on danger. So we need to give more discretion. So there are some in the prison system that will attack an officer because they know they can be segregated for a short period of time. They'll take that 15 days or 20 days, max, whatever it is. They'll do that, and that just shows it's not working. And they're worried about getting their pros. There are some, let's face it, there are some inmates in our correctional facility that really want to do better. They really want to try to be rehabilitated, and they're facing, again, 169% increase in the past 3 years, from 1,100 to almost 3,000. That's not a safe environment inside there for the inmates either. And you think the progressives and the radicals and the Democrats who seem more supportive of the inmates because they don't even want them in jail in some cases, they would recognize this is a problem for the inmates too. So let's make it safer for everybody.
We got to take a short break. Stay with us. Keep those questions and comments coming in, and we'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox.
If you or a loved one regularly used hair relaxers or straighteners and were diagnosed with uterine, ovarian, or endometrial cancer, you may be entitled to significant financial compensation.
I've used hair relaxers for years. I had no idea they could cause cancer.
Chemical hair relaxers and straighteners have been linked to serious conditions, including several types of cancer. If you used hair relaxers and have been diagnosed with uterine, ovarian, or endometrial cancer, call us now. There's no fee unless we win your case. Call today.
In today's securing your business is more important than ever. Protected with Boss Security's state-of-the-art alarm systems. When seconds matter, trust the experts. Boss Security is proud to safeguard local businesses across the Twin Tiers. Contact Boss Security today.
In a few words. Urkel, glasses. Nerd. It pays to know your nerds. If you guys didn't get nerd with me sitting up here on this show, 25 words or less.
Weeknights at 5 and 5.
The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security and Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are being joined live in the Hesselson studio by Assemblyman Phil Palmisano. Phil, we're going to move from that. Obviously, it's a huge, important issue, and I know we'll be talking about it more, and you'll be sending out more press releases. And you said today you're going to visit 5 Points, right?
Yes, that's correct.
So keep us updated. But I wanted to talk quickly because you actually had a very busy week. Tell us about Hochul and your call for flood relief, after Tropical Storm Debbie. We're talking about Tropical Storm Debbie.
Yeah, from August, it was a devastating storm, and we gave the governor credit. This time around, she provided direct assistance to families and homeowners who had damage up to $50,000, and we called on her to do that 3 years ago. She didn't, but she did it this year. And she came and visited, and we saw. So I give her credit that they made changes that basically increased the income thresholds that could qualify for it, and they allowed more time to apply. That was good. But the one thing we called for in the original letter that we sent to Governor Hochul. It was myself, Senator O'Mara, then at the time Assemblyman Giglio, and Assemblywoman Marge Burns. We said we also need you to have the state pick up the local share of the public damage, public infrastructure, because we're looking at basically over $50+ million in damage to Steuben County. Now, 3 years ago, she did pick up that local share. And the way traditionally for the viewer it works, when there's a FEMA disaster declaration, the federal government picks up 75%, and then there's a 25% share, 12.5% state, 12.5% local. Now, 3 years ago, she picked up the full share, and actually the federal government picked up 90% of that, but it's generally 75, 12.5, 12.5. So she picked it up 3 years, but we're asking her to pick up that full share. She hasn't announced anything on that, so we recalled our message on that again for her, because think about 12.5% of $50 million. The town of Jasper, the Jasper School District, they can't afford that. They just got devastated again in their school. Woodhull Canisteel, Jasper, Trusper, all these towns which are hammered by this flooding, they don't have the ability to have this infrastructure dollars, even Steuben County. So it's been done. There's precedent for years from Superstorm Stanley, Penyan flooding of 2014. We can go time and time again, and again with the storm 3 years ago. So we're just basically renewed our call. Governor Hochul, you need to pick up the local share of this flooding damage to help save the property taxpayer, because they can't afford it, and it would be a big hole in their budgets for many years to come to make up that damage of that 12.5% of that $50+ million in damage. So we call on her. It was myself, Senator Mayor, and this time Assemblyman Sempolinski, our new Assemblyman, and Assemblywoman Andrea Bally. So it was a team effort again with the 3 Assembly reps and Senator Amerigan to drive home this message. And it needs to be done. And so that's what we were calling on, and we said we had to bring this, and we're going to continue to try to put attention to that issue.
I also wanted to mention, we're focused on Hochul a lot this morning, but we talked with Assemblyman Joe Sempolinski, who you just mentioned yesterday on the program, and that's, I know it has since been tabled, but I never trust that, which is about the special election in the 21st Congressional District, which was so purely political and so sickening at its face value. I thought maybe you could talk about it in your reaction when you heard what they were attempting to do.
Yes. Well, first of all, most news that comes out on a Friday is bad news. The big one. It's their media dump. So Friday afternoon, I think Friday evening, the Democrats in the Assembly and Senate dropped a election change bill. Basically would have empowered the governor on a special election, and I'll focus more on the congressional. For the background, in 2021, we changed the law because of problems with delays of special elections for congressional districts. So it was unanimous support, I think it was unanimous, it was pretty much overwhelming support, Democrats and Republican, bipartisan, that basically said when there was a congressional vacancy, the governor would have to call the election within 10 days of the vacancy, and she'd have to set it, or he or she would have to set it no more than 40 to 70 days away. So you have the ability of 47 days. So what this bill did was it added, you still had the 47-day, or give the governor the discretion to set the election at the general election. So she would have the discretion. So we knew what they were going to do. They were going to try to do it so they could keep the New York 21 vacant for the rest of the term, because we know it's a close majority.
It's solid red.
Yeah, and this was a Hakeem. There was a meeting between Hakeem Jeffries and Governor Hochul.
That's why I like that
week.
Lawler pushed for the RICO Act to look into it as a RICO.
I mean, this was a power grab.
It was.
And they're so hypocritical. Their reason in the paper, they were going, we're looking to be efficient and save money, so we'll save more money if you have it. Since the governor proposes a $250 billion budget. $252 billion. I like to say $250 billion. I got that from Joe Sempolinski. It really kind of shows you the implications of the number. So yes, we're going to save money, and the other thing is we're going to increase voter participation. But you're not going to do that. But what you're going to do is you're going to disenfranchise nearly 800,000 voters in that district, and that could jeopardize critical federal funding grants for fire districts, for not-for-profits, for
you name it,
municipal governments, infrastructure. Those governments in that district would lose out on that funding because they'll just get swept back up because there wouldn't be a representative to do that, to be there. And I think about it. I had to think about Joe Sempolinski when I think about it. He went there for 4 months because he said, when other people didn't want to run, who's going to run for 4 months? Joe goes, I will. The voters of this congressional district need a voice down there who's going to fight and deliver for them, so it's not just being taken advantage of. He went down there and he got things done as a congressman, just like he's going to get done things as an assembly member. So I always say that we owe him a debt of gratitude for going down there to being our voice, to being our advocate, and making sure those resources were getting back to this district. So basically, if they would have put this through, because we had a press conference that Monday, we were expecting the bill that Monday. And then we found out like 2 hours later in a conference that they pulled it. Now, and I agree with you 100%. They can bring this back at any time if they want to, but I guess the issue is getting beat back and brought back, and rightfully so.
Even the media, Daily News, and places like that are far left, were saying this reeks from a party that has been talking about democracy for 4 years. And this is not the right direction.
And you look at their pattern, what they've done to try to influence elections with their one-party control. Remember the bill, the law that allow all local elections being even years.
Oh yeah,
which would in my opinion, disenfranchise local elections. Put everything we focused here. You'd have a obscene ballot. There'd be 2 pages. It would cost more money.
Well, I also think about the little guy running for town council.
Exactly.
or city council, how do they compete with on TV congressmen, senator, whatever,
in government or in president, because they're going to have to be dealing with that.
Yeah.
It would in local elections are the heart of our local communities, and they should have their own time frame to do it, and it should be their choice. If they want to go on an evening, let it be their choice.
Yeah.
Local control. This is another way they usurp local control. You remember the court challenges because they didn't like the redistricting. Obviously, got overturned here.
Yeah.
In Steuben County, they don't like them. So they say, okay, if you want to bring an election court case, you can go to 4 jurisdictions.
Yeah.
Buffalo, Albany,
yeah,
Westchester, and New York City.
Yeah.
Democratic bastions. So where's the fairness there?
There isn't.
And then also you got to look at it. It's a New York City only, but who knows what can happen down the road? There's a case pending before the Court of Appeals in Albany, which has been packed with Democrats because you saw what happened a couple years ago. They swapped out judges and made another one the chief judge. It was a scam in my opinion. Yeah. So they're looking at a case. There is a decision in New York City to allow non-citizens to vote in New York City elections. That's unconstitutional.
Yeah.
So that's going to be decided. So that these are the types of things they're trying to get to their advantage. They're not about fairness. They're not about equality in elections. They're about anything that gives them the advantage that can help them get more Democratic seats in Congress, state, or the city. And it's wrong, and we need to fight and push back on it. And that's what we'll continue to do. Even the no excuse absentee voting, which got turned down by voters.
Yeah.
Remember?
Oh yeah.
On a proposition. Well, they come back and they change like 4 words around it instead of it's mail-in voting. Yeah. It's the same thing.
Because what they call it, early absentee or something?
Yeah, I don't know. But they changed like 4 or 5 words.
Yeah, but
because we have absentee voting, you have early voting, and there are plenty of opportunities for people to vote. But God forbid you ask them to produce an ID to show when you come up to vote. You have to need an ID to get on an airplane. You need an ID to do this. You need an ID to do that. But you don't need it to vote because if you do ask for it, you're racist. It's ridiculous.
It makes no sense. We got to take our last break. Then we're going to wrap things up with Assemblyman Phil Palmisano. Stay with us.
Ever feel like a spectator in your own life with chronic migraine? 15 or more headache days a month, each lasting 4 hours or more. Botox prevents headaches in adults with chronic migraine. In a survey, 91% of users wish they'd started sooner. So why wait? Talk to your doctor.
Botox effects may spread hours to weeks after injection, causing serious symptoms. Alert your doctor right away, as trouble swallowing, speaking, breathing, eye problems, or muscle weakness can be signs of a life-threatening condition. Those with these conditions before injection are at highest risk. Side effects may include allergic reactions like rash, breathing problems, dizziness, neck and injection site pain, and headache. Don't receive Botox if there's a skin infection. Tell your doctor your medical history, muscle or nerve conditions like ALS, myasthenia gravis, or Lambert-Eaton syndrome, and medicines like botulinum toxins, which may increase the risk of serious side effects.
Chronic migraine may still keep you from being there. Ask your doctor about Botox today. Learn how AbbVie can help you save.
Invite you to discover what makes our school community so special, including the fact that everything, top-notch education, housing, healthcare, food, clothing, technology, and much more is provided to our students at no cost to our families. This is thanks to the generosity of our founders, chocolate maker Milton S. Hershey and his wife, Catherine.
The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are broadcasting from the Hesselson studio on beautiful Market Street in Corning. And Phil Palmisano is joining us. Phil, where are we at in the budget hearing? Or budget process? I know last time we talked a little bit about it.
Yep, we're on break from Albany this week, which is a good thing. I always say the less time we're in Albany, less damage can be done. But yes, we come back the next week, and we will conclude our budget hearings. I can't remember the exact one. I think it was like 13 budget hearings since the end of January. We've been doing like 3 a week, and some of them they're double these coming weeks. So we finish that up, and then the process is then the Assembly and the Senate will pass their one-house budget resolutions, which basically gives an outline of what their budget priorities are going into the three-way negotiations with the governor. It's my expectation that we will pass that probably the week of not the week of March 3rd, 4th, 5th, but the following week.
Okay.
And then we'll probably have one round of joint conference committees, and I think it's more of a show, quite frankly. We'll do, and we speak about the priorities, and we'll have to say some things, and then hopefully we get a budget on time by April 1st, but hopefully more than on time. It's a fair, reasonable responsible budget that doesn't have out of control spending and debt, doesn't increase taxes, and takes into consideration the concerns that have been raised by the public, families, farmers, small businesses, and manufacturers. We need a really responsible and sustainable budget, because the way we're spending money, a $250 billion budget, that's not unsustainable funding. And I think, and I've said it over and over again, I think sometimes the governor and others think it's their money. It's not. It's the people's money. So we need to be responsible. Just like other people are making tough decisions with their budgets, we should be doing the same thing at the state level.
I agree. Okay, well, you had a couple of visitors recently. I want to make sure that we mention all of them. First off, friend of Frankly Speaking, Joe Tobia visited.
Yes, Joe came up, and he actually did a fantastic job. He testified before the mental hygiene budget hearing, and he answered a lot of questions. He was talking about his advocacy for the rural suicide council bill, that he did a lot of work, making a lot of phone calls that we passed unanimously, that unfortunately the governor once again vetoed.
It was vetoed. We talked about it at the time. I can't see any rhyme or reason except for it has rural in the name.
Yeah, and they said, well, it was money, and there's no money. Are you kidding me? And they're worried about it, even if it's $2 million in the context of a $250 billion budget. Are you kidding me?
When they tell us, I keep pointing this. I know your favorite is the Hollywood tax credit. My favorite now is $13.5 million to ban cell phones in schools. Can't you just ban cell phones in schools?
Yeah, it's one thing after another. The misplaced priorities continue to grow and grow. But he did a great job, and the legislators are really engaged with him. Even I talked to Joanne Simon. She's the new chair of the mental health committee. She wants to help. She's trying to see if she can even get some language included in the budget. So there seems to be an appetite to do something. But I got to give Joe a lot of credit. He's really worked hard and taken his own tragedy for their family's tragedy to try to make changes so other families don't have to go through this again, to make sure the resources and the programs are in place, and that teamwork is working for it, because we know we have a mental health crisis in our state.
No doubt. And also I wanted to mention our friends, all our friends are visiting is Steuben County Office for the Aging.
Yep, they came up.
I'm going to put it on the screen. I got the photo, so you can go ahead and talk while it's on the screen.
Yeah, they did it. They came up and we had a nice meeting. Senator Romero not in that picture. We had a meeting in my office, and so people were coming in and out. So, but we said, hey, come on over to the assembly floor, and we got them introduced on the assembly floor. Had a nice little picture with them. But really, they do tremendous work to help our seniors, to make sure that they are getting access to the services and programs that they are entitled to and quite frankly deserve. I mean, we need to be helping our seniors and sharing with them and make sure they have those resources. And the representatives from the Office of the Aging in Steuben County, and quite frankly all the counties, do a tremendous job. It's a coordinated effort in all our counties, but it was nice to have them visiting. They were advocating for resources and assistance, and we should be doing it. I mean, when you think about one of the stats I used during the budget process last year, over the last 2 years, we spent $4.3 billion dealing with the migrant crisis in New York City. That's more than money than we spent on our veterans, our seniors, and our homeless combined. That's unacceptable. And that's changed. But I'm glad they were up there advocating. It was good to see them all. We had a nice conversation.
All right, Phil, finally, we've been promoting this, but I know the deadline is nearing. Tell us about the second annual Donate Life Art Contest. I'm going to take you off the screen for a moment because I've got all the exact information to put up on the screen. So if you want to tell us about it.
Yes, this is a contest that Donate Life sponsored last year. And in April, actually the majority leader, Crystal People-Stokes, and myself hosted a press conference, and we had all the art competition. They gave awards, and we talked about organ donation because this is an issue that's personal to both of us. And so we had this, and we're just trying to get attention, and we ask, there's different competitions for different grade levels, and we need our schools to be involved, so we send it out to our schools, but I've been sending it out to media. Thank you for promoting it.
Of course.
Hopefully so many people pick up on it. I was talking to them, Donate Life, yesterday, and they said they're not coming in like they want. I said, well, maybe extend the deadline, and we can share it, because we share it with all our members to try to get the word out. I'm not sure what's going on, but hopefully the media picks up on it and promotes it more, and we get some more submissions. And we had an incredible young lady who spoke at it last year that she stole the show. You wouldn't want to speak. I mean, literally, with not a note. Like I'm known for notes. People sometimes I have papers. She not a note in front of her, and she was just dynamic. A young lady who just spoke, and she actually wrote a book about the issue because she was prompted by her a situation with her grandfather, so it was personal. But it's just amazing the talent of these young people and diving into this. So hopefully we can get the word out and have more exposure. And at the end of the day, it's about exposing more people to education and awareness on this issue, because at the end of the day, it's about saving lives.
It really is. And I'm going to put that up on the screen one last time. It takes you off the screen, Phil, so you got a second there to breathe. And then you see that number, that website on the bottom of the screen. So if you want to find out more about the second annual Donate Life art contest, that's all the information you needed to know. So, Phil, that does it for us this morning. That went quick.
It did.
Do you think we covered everything? Everybody seems, and I just to reiterate this about the corrections officers, I feel so bad for them. Our thoughts and really our prayers go out to them, because it is so cold out there, which shows their passion for this. And I've seen so many quotes from people on the ground there saying, I don't care if I lose my job at this point. It's about what's right and wrong. Okay. And I just want to thank everybody in the community, whether it's the restaurants, just the local people stopping by and saying, here's a box of donuts and some coffee.
Plenty of retirees out there supporting their brothers. They go, I'm retired. I go, well, you're here with your brothers. And if I have a chance to say, I just want to say that to all the corrections officers, some of us get it. Senator O'Mara, some of them in Friend, some of them in Semplinsky, some of them in Bailey. All of us get it, and we're in your corner. We'll continue to speak out on those issues that matter most to you, and have done so in the past, and we'll continue to do so. But thank you for what you do for us to keep us safe each and every day.
And thank you also for exposing this, because you and I knew about the HALT Act and we knew about the safety issues, but relatively, what does, I'm running out of time, but what does the news cover? The news doesn't cover the HALT Act and the danger on corrections officers when something goes bad.
Yeah, and I will say that our local media has been pretty good about it. But the statewide media not so much, and they need to do that. And most people don't know about it. They're not, unless they're infected by it. Unless you live with a corrections officer, or a corrections officer, if you're a family member, they don't know what goes inside that building. Like I said, people drive by that building every day on the hill, and they don't know what's going on. They just want to make sure the bad guy's staying there.
Well, Phil, thanks for giving us so much time. We'll have to talk again soon.
Yeah, look forward to it.
All right, we'll be back on Monday, not on tomorrow. We'll be back Monday with Frankly Speaking, only on WYDC TV. Big Fox. I look forward to it.